I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 6th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Wildwood. On tonight's agenda, we have two public hearings, one letter of recommendation, three information reports, and one other item. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Hofree.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Cohn. Commissioner Broyles.
Here.
Commissioner Clayton.
Here.
Commissioner Deppler. Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Chair Beatty.
Here.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Can I get an approval from the minutes of May 2nd?
I move that we accept the minutes from May 2nd as presented.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Broyles. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the Department of Planning have any opening remarks?
No, sir, but just thanks to all of you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
All right. And then do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak for public comment? This is only for, if you want to speak on either of the public hearings, your time will come during the public hearings, but for anything else on the agenda, now is your chance to make your opinion known.
And again, Mr. Chair, if anyone that's an attendee that would like to speak on any item on the agenda, if you'd use the raise hand feature, it'd be much appreciated.
Hi, yes, how are you?
Mr. Chair, I do not see anyone using the raise hand feature, so I think we can proceed forward with the next item on the
I
agenda.
just saw one. Megan?
Sure. We'll promote her to a panelist. Mr. Chair, I think she's in. If she'd like to unmute, we can get her information and she can provide a comment.
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Can
Okay,
I get your name and address?
Yes, my name is Megan Hale. My address is 3525 Roanoke Road. That's in Kansas City, Missouri, 64111.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if this was the time where I should raise my hand, but I'm the project manager working on the solar project for Mr. Devine. So I'm ready to speak on that when his project comes up.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be up in a second here. This is just, that's one of our public hearing items.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll ask Ms. Hale Murphy to mute herself, and we'll just keep her on the screen since it's the next item on the agenda.
I am good with that. So seeing nothing else for public comment, we will start our first public hearing. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly attended to accept comments and questions concerning these items. Since these requests are being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on these items tonight, and consideration of them is to be taken no earlier than July 18th, 2022. This approach ensures the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of their formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at these hearings. A team member will add you to the list of speakers that will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation in tonight's hearings. So our first one is PZ 6-22. Mr. Vunich, are you? Let's see.
Mr. Newberry will be reading the request into the record as well as entering certain items necessary for a conditional use permit request. And then Ms. Ripito will be providing a slide presentation tonight. So thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Mr. Newberry?
PZ 6-22, Joseph Devine, 3466 Whitsets Fork Road, care of Rising Sun Solar, care of Megan Hale Murphy, 3525 Roanoke Road, Suite 110, Kansas City, Missouri, 64111. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU Non-Urban Residence District, street address 3466 Whitsets Fork Road, locator number 26W520090, for the installation of roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the dwelling as to be visible from the adjoining roadway. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance, which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the panel's placement on the front-facing portions of the roof areas on the dwelling, thereby causing them to be visible from the adjoining roadway. Ward 6. And Mr. Chair, as Mr. Vunich mentioned, the department would like to submit into the official record for tonight's public hearing the city's charter, the city's master plan, Chapter 415 of the city's Code of Ordinances, the zoning ordinance, the file that the department is keeping on this matter, and also as part of the same, any testimony, exhibits, or items provided as part of the proceedings for tonight's hearings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Ms. Ripito?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. If you'll bear with me one moment. Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. The first map that we have here is an overview of the general area. As you can see, the site is right here that it's being circled. It's surrounded by large lots in the areas that have been subdivided. The next map, oh, it's not working. The next map that we'll show is zoomed in on the property. As you can see, the blue outlined area is the property in question. The property is split along Whitsets Fork with part of the property to the north and part of the property to the south. The home is actually to the north, and then there are some outbuildings and a fenced-in area to the south of Whitsets Fork. The following is a site plan provided by the petitioner. As you can see, it's a site plan of the property, and you can see where the proposed solar panels will be placed on the home. And Whitsets Fork cuts through the center, and the detached structures are to the south of Whitsets Fork. This is a close-up version of the placement of the solar panels along the home's roof. The department took photographs of the site. This first photograph is from Whitsets Fork looking to the north of the property directly at the home. The following one is, again, another view of the home from the bottom of the driveway. This is actually a view of the home through the trees is where the home would be located, or where the home is located. This is from the property line on the west. And this is a view of the home from around the property line on the east. This is looking to the west of the home and down the street. This is looking to the east, so you can see the surrounding areas. These are the detached structures across the street from the home. Because there were questions regarding placement of the solar panels potentially being on the detached structures from comments that were received by the department, we have included photographs of the the detached structures from Whitsett's Fork. And this is from the east property line looking at the detached structure. This is closer, but still from the same direction. This is from the west property line looking towards the detached structures. And this is a bit closer, the same detached structures. And this is the last photograph that we have of the site. This concludes our presentation, but if there are any questions, the department is here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a question for the city attorney. There's our city attorney. Thank you, John. So my question is whether it would be possible to postpone this hearing to a time certain. And my reason for asking that is it's apparent from looking at the photos, given the time of year that we're in, that the true effect of the solar panels in terms of the visibility, which is the essence of why we have this CUP process, it can't be fully known until we are at a point in the year when the leaves are not nearly as pronounced as they are and hiding things as they are now. So my question is would it be in order to make a motion to postpone this hearing to a time certain when it would be more apparent to the commission as to a worst case scenario relative to the visibility of the panels?
A motion to continue the hearing would be appropriate at the conclusion of the presentation for today. I think it would be appropriate at that time, but I wouldn't cut short the hearing today. I would continue it today, and then if you don't get the answers or information you're looking for, you can make a motion to continue the hearing until a date certain.
Okay, so once all presenters and people who may want to speak to it have concluded and done that, then that kind of a motion would be in order. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Ward?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify. So far, we've received one person who is opposed to the panels as they stand presented today. And my other question was, and I guess it's hard to tell from the photography that we've seen, but it seems like to me, it looked like the outbuildings were more of a visibility concern than the actual property. And maybe Melanie can speak to that.
I was thinking the same thing on those outbuildings. They'd be more visible from the road than the house, but Ms. Ripito, can you clarify that we've only had one letter in opposition to the panels?
I would ask Mr. Newberry to confirm, but we've had one that I'm aware of. We might have gotten a second one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ripito, and Mr. Chair. The department provided, as part of the information packet, 2 public comments stating they do not support the solar panel. Additional comments were received over the weekend and today that were provided to the commission members via email. One expressing concern regarding the placement of the panel. One saying that they do not have any concerns regarding the request. And then another in support was delivered to City Hall today as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry.
And again, those are emailed to the ones received today and over the weekend were emailed to the commission this afternoon.
And if I could, as a point of information, Mr. Chairman, this particular subdivision is not a large subdivision. So I would submit to the commission that the comments relative to this, are not or just make note for the commission as a point of information that the comments pro and con are not coming from, a very large subdivision. It's comparatively small as far as Wildwood standards are concerned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
I have promoted two panelists, Mr. Devine, and as you know, Miss Hale Murphy, the representative for the solar panel company, is on screen as well. Thank you.
Ms. Hale Murphy or Mr. Devine, would either of you like to address the commission?
Yeah, I can speak on a couple of things. You guys
Are you able to hear me?
You're cutting in and out, but yeah, Megan was starting to, Ms. Hale Devine was starting to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as the detached buildings across the road, those, in order for us to tie the solar from the detached buildings to the house, we would have to trench across the road because we're connecting to the main service panel on his home. And so that's really not an option. Why we chose the home, and the front of the home would give us the best return on investment. It's more south facing the back of the home, which would be approved. We wouldn't need a conditional use permit. Is north facing, so it will significantly decrease the potential production of the solar panels, and in turn his return on investment. The solar panels are, they're black on black, mounted, with flush to the roof. I'm sure you guys have seen solar panels on roofs nowadays. They're becoming very common. They look a lot different than what they were even 5 years ago. They're very aesthetically pleasing now. And I guess that's it. I guess I don't know what else I can say to help sway you guys.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Mr. Devine, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, able to hear me?
You're cutting in and out.
To hear me?
A little bit.
Yeah, we don't get great internet connection out here. Well, to the point of waiting, the trees and evergreen trees. So it's gonna, waiting to the fall, anything different than looking at it now. I'm not sure. Even for delaying.
All right. I only got a little bit of what you're saying, but I feel like I did notice in those pictures, two of the big trees in the front there were evergreens, which would hold their leaves. Is that what you were pointing out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why that's what I'm pointing out, is that there's not really going to be anything, any of the conditions by trying to get this done since November of last year. And so I really would rather not delay any further.
I appreciate the comment. Is there anything further, Mayor Boland?
No,
All right,
just
I'll
to
let Mayor Boland
clarify,
go.
is he saying that he does not wish to wait any further because the trees won't make a big difference in terms of seasonal foliage? I couldn't quite hear what he was.
That's most of what I got out of it. Yeah,
Okay.
like you, it was very choppy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mayor Boland?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank Mr. Devine for his desire to do something that's environmentally friendly, and I'm not necessarily looking to detract from that, but nevertheless, the facts are we don't have in the materials, or at least I didn't see, an elevation that shows what these panels will look like once they are on the residence. We have a description, and we have black and white drawings, and we're taking that description without seeing it in an elevation, first of all. And secondly, even if we did have that, we have the issue of, yes, some of the trees are evergreen, some of them aren't. And I think it would be good, given the proximity of this home to the street and the size of the subdivision. And third point I would make, the opposition that has been expressed from some members in the subdivision to postpone the hearing until such time as we can get an elevation, drawings that show what they're going to look like, along with photographs that are taken at a time other than in the middle of June. So with all that in mind, and for those reasons, I would make a motion to postpone to the first meeting in October.
With all due respect, the first October, there will still be leaves on the trees. We usually don't have leaf fall.
Well, I'm trying to, if we need to postpone again, we can, but I'm trying to do it at a time that accommodates the resident as quickly as possible. And it may be the case that October will work, and if it does, that would be great, and we can resume it then. If not, then we could move it to another 30 days. But I would not want to extend it at this point past October, and we can decide that, cross that bridge later. So that would be my motion.
Seconded.
Would it be an option if Mr. Devine has pictures of his home from winter months without, any tree foliage? And if I could get you like pictures of other installs that we have done with the same panels, so you could see what they would look like installed, could we possibly get it on the agenda sooner?
If I may answer that, I mean, the other installs, I want to see what they're going to look like on this residence, because that's what the residents in this subdivision and anyone else who drives in there is going to see. So I don't, respectfully, with all due respect, I don't think that would be particularly helpful. The issue of the photographs might be helpful, but of course it would depend on when they are taken. And I prefer to make decisions in current time with current foliage, current facts. So I appreciate your suggestion on that, but the motion I would make stands, and I believe it's been seconded.
Yeah, Beatty, I seconded it.
I got that, Commissioner Jackson. Thank you. So the motion is to postpone until our October meeting. All those in favor, Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I would just like to say on this, what I was thinking was that, the city does have an ordinance, and I know we're here to see if we want to give a special permit for it. And the reason, if we have an ordinance and there's residents that object to it, I think we have to really adhere to our ordinance. So I just wanted to say that I support what the mayor's saying, but even if, like tonight, because of the objection by residents, I would say I'd have to vote against it, which I really don't want to, because there's also panels that are proposed for a front facing that's actually in my subdivision. And I've canvassed a number of our residents and nobody has an objection. So I think it's a different situation than when there are residents that do have an objection. I think, I mean, then I think we have to just fall to what our ordinance says. And I just wanted to clarify my position. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, so I'm thinking along the same lines as Commissioner Brost or Councilman Brost. But what I would add to it, where I differ with him, if there's an ordinance in a subdivision, there's an ordinance. If we start making exceptions, it sets bad precedents. On the other conditional use permits, there have been scenarios where they're out in the middle of nowhere, there's not much traffic. That's something you can accommodate. But when you start getting into more dense populations and you start setting a precedence, what the heck does an ordinance mean, right? And we've set that. And that's where I'm at, struggling. But in regards to this scenario, yeah, I would have to vote against, as much as I wouldn't want to, because it'd be on the front side if we took a vote tonight. But again,
there wouldn't be any vote tonight regardless.
I understand that. I said if there was, right?
Okay, all right.
So when you start setting precedents for the future, then maybe we should consider changing the whole ordinance. Then we're not having these every month because it doesn't matter, right? So that's my 2 cents on that.
All right.
And to clarify, just to be sure, if we vote, we're voting right now to postpone any decision until October. Is that?
Well, all we're doing tonight is voting to hold the public hearing open until our October meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Mayor Bowen?
I'll pass.
Okay.
Okay, so to follow up on that, if we vote not to do that, would it move forward?
Yeah, if we vote no tonight, the public hearing, well, someone would have to make a motion to close the public hearing. And then Mr. Vunich and the Department of Planning would have a recommendation for us next month to vote on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so like I said, the motion is to postpone until October. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, were there any voting in opposition?
You can put me down as a no vote, but I didn't see or hear anyone else.
I think Mayor Boland was talking, but he's on mute.
I think
I'm sorry. I was asking the same question, whether the chair was voting no or yes. So I saw a hand, but I didn't hear the vote. So that was my question as well. Thank you.
And just to follow up, in October, we will then vote.
No, October, we will get pictures of the home with hopefully less foliage.
And we
along with elevations.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we can make recommendations.
And then in November, it'll come back before us with a final recommend to vote yes or no. All right. So the public hearing will be held open until our October meeting. Mr. Devine, Ms. Hale, thank you for your time.
Beatty, can I ask a question to Mr. Vunich?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any solar projects that you approve based on the ordinances that we don't see? Because it seems like we see every single solar thing comes up before us. And I'm just curious if some are so clean cut that you can approve them without P&Z or city council.
Yes, sir. We process a number of requests that are under the provisions that they're not visible from an abutting or adjoining street. And therefore, once we get the trustees to submit something, we process them on through.
Okay, and so the recourse, if you say no, comes to P and Z, or if there's a special circumstance, it comes to P and Z, right?
The Planning and Zoning Commission is involved when the panels are so situated on the residence that they're visible from a roadway. And that is when a conditional use permit is necessary, and that's when the Planning and Zoning Commission becomes involved. Yes, sir.
Okay, and, okay,
And would it also include if anyone protested? If we got the one person that felt it wasn't a good thing?
Ms. Ward, there is in our charter as well as in the zoning ordinance a process for neighbors to protest or do initiate a petition, but that follows after the Planning and Zoning Commission has taken action.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have PZ 7-22. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 7-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible additions or changes to the regulations that are associated with Chapter 415.030 definitions, Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban residence district, Chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district, Chapter 415.120 R1A 22,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.130 R2 15,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.140 R3 10,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.150 R4 7,500 square foot residence district, and Chapter 415.160 R6A 4,500 square foot residence district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, which would consider better defining current regulations while potentially introducing new requirements relative to the installation and maintenance of fences throughout this community to ensure limited impacts on adjoining property owners, as well as adjusting safety considerations for the same, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight a cover memorandum on a report that was prepared by the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council. Starting in late 2021, the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council was given the charge by the City Council to take a hard look at the fence regulations as they exist today in Wildwood. I think the Planning and Parks Committee was somewhat surprised when they realized that there are not very many regulations relating to fencing. And in fact, if a fence is 6 feet or less in height, it pretty much can go anywhere on a lot in any of the R districts, the resident districts, as well as the NU non-urban resident district. There are a few provisos to that, particularly at the intersection of two streets where a sight distance triangle exists, and any obstruction there is prohibited unless under 36 inches in height. In the town center, there are a few more regulations, but not so many that you would be surprised, I think, as well. The Planning and Parks Committee was in that particular case too. As the Planning and Parks Committee began that process of review, the Department of Planning provided them a number of items relating to fencing, just in terms of style, design, height, color, material, location, and maintenance. Ultimately, the Planning and Parks Committee made a recommendation to City Council. That recommendation was reviewed by the city attorney and ultimately presented by the Department of Planning to that committee. The report from the Planning and Parks Committees to City Council basically shows the recommended changes. There are two new definitions that would be added to the zoning ordinance. That is section 415.030. And then in each of the R districts, as well as the NU non-urban resident district, further regulations would be established. First and foremost, any fence, again, under 6 feet in height could be in the structure setbacks. That is not inclusive now of the front yard area. There are provisions for that, but the fence must now be 10 feet from the edge of right-of-way. That's a new addition, and that's referenced in these proposed regulations. There is a stipulation, again, relating to site distance triangles, and those exist at the intersection of 2 streets. There is an opacity value that's now added for fencing that is at that 10-foot distance in a front yard setback. There is a description of types of materials that are allowed. There is references to the building code, particularly for swimming pools. There is a provision that protects existing fences and makes them legal, but maybe non-conforming. And then finally, it recognizes that certain subdivisions across the city of Wildwood already have regulations that are probably more prohibitive than even these as proposed. Finally, one of the key points that came out of the committee's process was rural areas and deer fencing. And so a special provision was made that would allow an 8-foot high fence to basically thwart deers in the side and rear yard setbacks of certain lots that can be that are contiguous under the same ownership and create a size that's greater than 5 acres. Ultimately, the Planning and Parks Committee presented the recommended changes to the City Council. The City Council endorsed them, and then as part of that discussion, referenced that the items need to be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration and recommendation, and that is the intent of tonight's public hearing. Mr. Chair, Ms. Ripito, Mr. Newberry, Mr. Young, and I are available to address any questions that may arise from the commission or any of the attendees at tonight's public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Boland?
I just have a question, maybe for you, Joe, or for the city attorney. What action ultimately are you looking for from the commission relative to this, and when?
Mr. Mayor, the intent of the department is to prepare its information report with recommendation regarding the matter for the next meeting in July, to have the letter of recommendation completed for the first meeting in August, which is August 1st, and to have the matter to City Council for final action in August as well.
Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Ward, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So Joe, thank you for all your, research and all this. Just to help me understand, this would acquiesce, anything we would do would acquiesce to indentures in existing subdivisions in terms of fencing. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner Ward, the intent is not to circumvent or lessen restrictions that exist in subdivisions. Ours would only supplant them or be more restrictive if none exist.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
So you're setting a parameter, like they can only be 6 foot tall, chain link, solid wood if they want privacy fences, et cetera. And here's the parameters. But if I'm not mistaken, an HOA trumps it. As long as it's in those parameters, an HOA can say you can only have a 3-foot high fence, right? So it would not trump an HOA ruling, correct?
Correct.
That's
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if there are no other questions from the commission members, just again, if there's any of the attendees that would like to speak on this particular matter, if you'd raise your hand, I'll let the chair know so he can recognize you and you can then participate in the public hearing. Thank you.
And to reiterate, you simply need a motion tonight?
Tonight, this is just the public hearing. So
Okay.
after everyone is done speaking, just a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Broyles?
I would just like to make a comment in regard to and congratulate the Planning and Parks Department with its leadership for coming to this consensus and moving this forward. I think it's overdue, and happy to hear that it's not going to override the HOAs in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Boland?
To give credit, further where credit's due, this actually originated with our city attorney, John Young, who has advised the city that we need to have this type of ordinance in place. So thanks to him for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, much of the research conducted by the department was done by Ms. Ripito. And again, we did acknowledge Mr. Young's participation because again, with any ordinances and changes to it, we count on the city attorney to make sure we stay within the boundaries, so to speak, of what's right and legal. Thank you.
So regarding I see it might be prohibiting chain link fencing, and I know the schools have a lot of that. Are reading through that table, will chain link fences be prohibited in those types of areas, or are they? I mean, I know what they have existing is going to get grandfathered in, but if a new school was to be built, would they have to come up with some other fence design then?
The chain link type would have to be vinyl coated or with some similar type of material so as to offset the aesthetics of a typical fence. These recommended changes have no impact in commercial and industrial settings.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no comments from the public, any final comments from the commission? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Second by Commissioner Ward. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Thank you.
And that's an aye for me too, sorry.
Okay. I heard a lot more people on this one than the last one. All right, next on the agenda, let's see here. PZ 4-10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vunich.
A response to a request from the Wildwood Historical Society, WHS, care of Charlie St. Onge, regarding PZ 4-10 Wildwood Historical Society, amended conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU non-urban resident district, south side of State Route 100, west of Pinkin Road, St. Louis County, locator number 26Y630111, which requests modifications to the governing permit to allow for additional uses at the property, specifically associated with the existing single-family dwelling, with the intent to accommodate an art gallery, professional office, or other compatible accessory activities. Currently, the amended conditional use permit, CUP, governing the site restricts the use of the dwelling to residential purposes. The site has been placed on the city's historic register. Also, the property is located in Ward 6. Mr. Chair, Ms. Ripto will be providing the department's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Ms. Ripto.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning and Parks has prepared for your consideration a draft letter of recommendation on the matter that was just read into record. At the last meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission voted 9-0 to grant a request for modifications to the governing permit for the Wildwood Historical Society to allow for additional uses of the existing single-family home known as the Henkin House. The Department of Planning has prepared this letter of recommendation and also notes the concerns discussed at the last meeting regarding the original request by the petitioner to include professional offices and other compatible accessory activities. Although these uses in particular were considered to be too broad in nature, the commission supported expanding the permitted uses at the existing single-family home to include an expansion of the existing museum, an art gallery, and/or specialized private school with the conditions regarding hours of operation, enrollment, occupancy permit, limiting the use of the outside areas on the site, and condition pertaining to the parking and circulation on the property. The petitioner is aware of the associated changes to the request and the associated conditions and is okay with them. The department would note that offices for a school or gallery would be permitted, and that the parking lot improvements may be required at a later date depending on the use and level of activity, but not at this time. So this draft letter of recommendation is ready for consideration and final action tonight and is formatted to be forwarded to the city council. I would note that a positive vote would be to approve the draft letter of recommendation, which would expand the uses of the single family dwelling to allow for a museum expansion and art gallery and/or specialized private school with the conditions shown in the red line version of the conditional use permit provided for your review this evening. If there are any questions, Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry, or I are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Is there any discussion or motion from the commission? Commissioner Helfrey?
I will make a motion to approve the recommendation.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Broyles, second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Ward.
I know that we had a couple people that protested, the neighborhood people that felt maybe that was just too much, and with people coming in and traffic and parking. Do we feel fairly good that we've satisfied some of their issues?
I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Ms. Ripito.
As far as the concerns regarding parking and circulation, as the governing permit exists today, the property does have access to that road. However, the applicant is aware of the concerns and willing to do what they can to direct traffic to off of 109 rather than through the subdivision. And the proposed uses shouldn't have a tremendous level of activity, so it shouldn't be problematic, but it is something that we can address later. And one of the conditions is in regards to parking and circulation, should there be a need to address it at a later date.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that you meant 100 and not 109.
Oh, my apologies, I did. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm on the right place.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
correct.
Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Motion
you.
carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, PZ 3-22, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the first item under information reports is PZ 3-22, Tarl Vetter, 19301 Babbler Forest Road, Wildwood, Missouri, care of SunPro Solar LLC, 2531 North Patterson Avenue, Springfield, Missouri, 65803. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU non-urban resident district, street address 19301 Babbler Forest Road, locator number 21Y 410116, for the installation of roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the dwelling as to be visible from the adjoining roadway. The request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the panel's placement on the side-facing area of the roofs of the dwelling, thereby causing them to be visible from the adjoining roadway. This particular site is located in Ward 1. And Mr. Chair, Mr. Newberry will be providing the department's information report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunish. Mr. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight its information report with recommendation regarding the request that was just read into the record. The subject site of the request is 5 acres in area and located on a private roadway that is rural in character and serves a large lot, low density, single family home development pattern. The department would note that as part of this request, there were 2 mailing notifications that were completed. The first for the public hearing that was held in May and another for tonight's meeting. This notification was sent to homes within 3,000 feet of the subject site. With that notification, the commission is in receipt of 2 comments. One comment was favorable for the request. The other comment posed the question whether the panels could be located so as not to be visible from the street. It's also important to note that the property is not subject to a homeowners association. Therefore, trustee notification and input is not applicable in this circumstance. As the commission is aware, conditional use permit requests must be reviewed by the Department of Planning, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission to ensure that the proposal meets each of the 4 criteria that are put forth in the city's zoning code. And those are also outlined, those 4 criteria are also outlined as a component of the department's report. In reviewing this request, the department has determined that the proposal does meet these 4 criteria when also taking into consideration the recommended conditions associated with the department's favorable recommendation. Importantly, in considering the impact of the roof-mounted solar energy system to the adjoining properties, the department believes that the placement and design are appropriate and will not negatively impact the neighboring properties. This assessment regarding the impact is based on a few rationales. The first is that the property immediately across the roadway is vacant. Additionally, the subject home is set back from the roadway a good distance. And lastly, the department would note that both the side yard areas to the east and to the west of the home are substantially wooded. The department believes each of these items demonstrate that the impact would be minimized. And lastly, the recommended conditions that are outlined as attachment B as part of the department's report do ensure that the installation will meet the requirements of the city's zoning code regarding solar energy systems, specifically the color and mounting of them on the roof, as well as the required building permits, fire district notification, and ongoing maintenance consideration. And in conclusion, the department is recommending approval of the requested conditional use permit for the solar energy system with the conditions as outlined again in attachment B of the department's report. And with that, Mr. Chair, the department concludes and is available for any questions the commission members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have a question relative to the parcel of ground that is directly opposite on the other side of the road from this particular residence that doesn't currently have a residence or other structure. What do we know about the acreage of that? And I mean, it's the possibility or likelihood of it being developed with people who will be living directly across the street. Do we have any data on that?
Yes, Mayor Boland. The property directly across the street is also approximately 5 acres in area. It does have a triangular shape, and if with your permission and permission of the chair, I can pull up an aerial view. I have that handy.
Please do.
Just give me a moment while my well, not quite as handy as I hoped. Thanks. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you'll see on my web browser here in the city's interactive maps, the subject property is highlighted as I move my cursor in red and blue. The property directly, this aerial doesn't show the home on it currently. Was just the quickest one to pull up. The vacant property that's referenced in the department's report is this triangular shape. The home on the subject lot is towards the center of its frontage onto Babler Forest Road. And so the narrowest portion of the lot is directly across from the subject site and likely undevelopable in that area.
Is that a T intersection at the right where your mouse pointer was?
Yes, the road does deviate this direction along the frontage of the property across the street.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to see the road along there, whereas I can see Babler Forest Court pretty well.
Maybe that's a
Yeah,
little
there we
better.
go. Yep. Mayor Bullen?
So one of the questions we got from someone in that subdivision, Rick Collis, who's actually the chair of our Internet Access Committee, was whether there were other options available for placement of the solar panels to achieve the same benefit. Do we have an answer for? And I'm assuming that he's asking that question because he's not fond of where they're located. And again, just like we had earlier, he's a resident in that area. So do we have an answer? Do we know the answer to that question? Or?
Mayor Bolin, I would answer the question by stating that the department did advise the petitioner's representative that if the solar panels were placed so as not to be visible from the street, that a conditional use permit would not be required. And then after receiving that information, this is the plan that was put forth by the petitioner.
So in their mind, at least, but not necessarily anyone else's, the answer is no.
I would take the submittal of the plans as they were submitted as that's the way they'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I'll defer to Ms. Ward first. Thank
Okay,
you.
Commissioner Ward?
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify with the same thing we just had in terms of foliage and all that. I know that the property across is not at this point developed or whatever, but feasibly it may be, right? So I'm just trying to see if, I guess I want us to have a consistent way that we look at things. If we look at it one way, back there, and the foliage may come out and it may not, I guess I am concerned about our consistency. So help me understand how we're being consistent.
Mayor Bullen?
You're on
muted.
mute.
Sorry. Yep. So I mean, I don't know to whom you were directing that question, Commissioner Ward, but I'll take just a preliminary sort of stab at it. I mean, I think your point is a very salient one. Not only the foliage issue, but just because someone is not currently in a home directly across from this particular residence doesn't mean that someone isn't going to be. In all likelihood, they will be. Secondly, for consistency purposes, we have a resident, who has raised a concern about it. So, I mean, I just speaking personally relative to this, I think it comes down to either a similar postponement or a no vote in my mind. Thank you. If it's not postponed.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, same thing. So when we started the conditional use, or not didn't start it, when I got on the planning and zoning, a lot of these exceptions to the code ordinance were remote. There wasn't a lot of traffic, and I could see, accommodating someone there. But again, we have a scenario where someone's raised a concern in the previous one and now on this one. But then let's go back to Mr. Brost, and he's done a canvas of his, and no one's concerned at this time. So do we set a precedent where, okay, as long as no one objects, we're gonna allow something that's not in compliance with the ordinance? The ordinance is the ordinance. The exceptions would be very rural, remote areas, in my mind. We've been going down this road for some time. This comes up from time to time, this exact discussion. And the next mayor, the next planning and zoning, it's whatever. I mean, how do we set a precedent for this, right? I mean, it's what I'm struggling with. Even though it may be the right thing to do, it may be green, renewable, and et cetera. If we keep making exceptions, we have no ordinance. So that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
to Mr. Jackson's comment, I would just say that in the zoning ordinance, as part of the regulations for conditional use permits, they've established as 4 criteria. Those are the 4 criteria the city Department of Planning uses when considering these types of requests where the panels are visible from an abutting or adjoining roadway. We try to be consistent in that regard. And I think if you review the recommendations that have been provided over the course of several years, that consistency will exist. In terms of this particular site, there are no trees that need to basically wait till fall for the leaves to fall and be removed. As you can see from the photographs that were provided, this is a relatively new residence. And as part of that, the trees that were in the front yard area were removed. So regardless of what time of year, what season, the panels will be visible from the adjoining roadway. And that again is shown on the photographs that were provided by the department. In terms of whether there is an impact or not, I would suggest that if there is a desire to postpone, we could ask the company that's providing the panels to do an analysis of what the panels will look like, a rendering. And also, if they were switched to other locations on the dwelling, what would be the impact on the power generated, the amount of electricity? And we can make a determination then if it's too great or too little or not enough, whatever the situation. So there is some additional information we can certainly provide. Thank you.
Mayor Boland?
I think we all agree that the allegiance to environmental protection and using less resources is just an awesome thing. I don't think I would predict no one on this panel of commissioners or our city team members believes differently. That said, I'm a pragmatist. It doesn't do this particular landowner a lot of good, or neighboring residences and owners of those residences a lot of good to do something that ends up deflating the value of their properties by at least as much or more than the benefit they're getting from the solar panels. So in this instance, given the comments from Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Jackson and the consistency, I think there might be some element of compromise available. I don't know that yet. If I had to vote now, I'd vote no. But I would make a motion to refer back to, or to postpone, I guess would be in order, since we don't have a body to refer to. So I'd make a motion to postpone till the next meeting of the commission to give the department time to work with the landowner and potentially the solar panel people, but I think it's going to be more likely the landowner, to come up with a landscape plan that can balance the interest of those in the subdivision that don't like it and the prominence of this as it's seen from the street with evergreens. And in the motion, I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about an evergreen that's 1 foot tall. We wait for 16 years to get there. So that would be my motion, that the motion is to postpone, to give the department time to work out a compromise that would allow this landowner to do what they want to do while protecting the interest of everyone else, with evergreens that are fairly tall at the moment.
And seconded by Commissioner Ward. Since it's a postponement, just a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Right.
Are we going to discuss it at all?
Well, on a postponement, usually that goes right to vote.
No.
Okay.
No, every motion gets discussed, actually, so.
Oh, I thought
Correct.
postponement there. Okay, sorry. Commissioner
That's all right.
Brost or Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I can just say from planting, I drive by the house at least a couple times a day. Plantings and that is not going to change the visibility from the street. It at least for maybe 50 years. I mean, Mayor, when you mentioned Rick being opposed, that was news to me because I think I've heard otherwise, but I mean, we just have a tricky situation here is that we have an ordinance that says none of these should even come in front of P&Z, but they come in front of P&Z every time. You know, again, what I mentioned earlier, I didn't really get any oppositions to it. I actually just texted Rick and he commented that he was okay with it, but his wife doesn't like the look of solar panels. You know, I don't mind, you know, postponing maybe for a hope for the homeowners, but I don't think they're going to be able to have a viable landscape plan with, this is relatively close to the road. So, and Scott, to answer your question, I have one of those situations that never came in front of P&Z. I mean, you could walk around my house and never see my solar panels, but we've got them. And so it does happen, but unfortunately, there's a lot of these situations too. I honestly, if those homeowners are listening, I would not do the application on my home that they're proposing for their home. I would not want that curb appeal, but that's their property, not mine. So I just wanted to add that. I don't think there's I don't think there's going to be any viable landscape plan, just so everybody knows that.
Thank you for that. And I mean, just looking at the house, my thought is, I mean, their ideal spot for the panels is their front facing roof. It faces south. I mean, they do have, from the image that I've got pulled up here, I mean, it looks like they could maybe do some, there's a room where they could do some east-west facing ones, but yeah, the trees are also a lot closer back there. And so it might not have the same effect. So, and I mean, my general thought on we're concerned about the neighbors, but if I was wanting a house with solar panels, I wouldn't be looking at any homes with a south facing roof on the north side of the street. So if I were searching, I mean, that's just my counterpoint. But Mayor Boland, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've already made the motion and it's been seconded to postpone, and that means that it is now in the possession of the commission and it can only be withdrawn with unanimous consent. I would be fine if there is unanimous consent to withdraw the motion to postpone. We'll leave that to the commission. Otherwise, we can postpone for 30 days and address it in 30 days. But if there is unanimous consent to withdraw the motion that's now in the possession of the commission, my motion would be to not approve panels. So I guess I would ask through the chair what the sentiment of the commission is. Do you want to keep the motion to postpone? And I say what I just said, by the way, in light of Commissioner Brost's point, who knows this property probably better than any of us. You know, if it's not going to be viable, we're just delaying the inevitable. So, but if the commission wants to keep the motion to postpone, any one member that objects, it stays. If there's unanimous consent, then it'll be gone and we can have another motion, and that would be my motion.
Is there anyone against withdrawing the motion to postpone? Councilman Brost?
Yeah, is the property owner or the solar company, are they present to see if they have a preference whether we vote tonight or postpone?
Mr. Bros, Miss Vetter is on as an attendee. I could certainly promote her with the permission of the chair and commission.
I mean, maybe we ask if they want to try to do more homework or do something. I'm not sure which way the vote would go, but I mean, I don't mind voting in favor of it, but it's one of those that we do have an ordinance against it. It's just, so that's the only thing. I'm not sure.
Is there any objection to bringing the veterans in?
No.
I'm okay with bringing them, allowing them to speak.
Well, I would I would ask the city attorney whether that's appropriate at this point, given that we've already had a hearing on it. I'm not trying to foreclose their ability to speak. We just can't do anything illegal. So if I make a point of order through the chair, City Attorney Young, is that appropriate at this point?
Yeah, and I was going to interject as a technical procedural matter. You've got a motion on the floor that is subject to debate and a request to actually withdraw that motion. It's really not appropriate to bring people outside of the board to interject themselves into that process.
All right. So
that was my point also. Thank you. And I wanted to reiterate that we as a committee have to decide, are we aesthetic or are we energy? Because I think that's where our angst comes in all of these times. And I know we're supposed to consider every issue individually, but we do have to have a sense of consistency. I think that makes us more, more of a valid body.
Real quick, just so we get back to the rules, is there objections to withdrawing the motion to postpone? Commissioner Helfrey?
Sorry, I'm here and I'm paying attention and I'm still confused. What exactly are we supposed to be voting for right now?
Right now, Mayor Bolin wants to withdraw his motion to postpone, and I'm just looking to see if that needs unanimous consent. So if anyone objects to that motion, they need to speak up.
So we're voting to say yes or no, we want to postpone it. You do not need a second to.
No.
Do you object to the mayor withdrawing his motion to postpone?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I thought that it had to be voted down. We had a motion and a second.
Okay, I think I can
But
explain
he
this.
said he was going to withdraw his motion, and that can be withdrawn with unanimous consent.
Right. So, okay, so I'll try to help out here if I can. Beatty, is it okay?
Well, right now.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so.
I don't think there's objections to him withdrawing the motion, so the motion is withdrawn.
Okay.
Right.
Now, now that motion is withdrawn, is it okay to, with no motion on the table at the moment, would it be okay to bring the homeowner in?
I don't think so.
Mr. Young?
Mr. Chair, the opportunity for the homeowner's participation was during the hearing. At this time, during the debate, it would not be appropriate.
Okay. I feel like we've done that in the past, so that's why I asked again. Okay, Mayor Bolin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, and thanks to the commission for allowing the motion to postpone to be withdrawn and for Commissioner Brost's points that gave rise to that withdrawal. Given the consistency point that Commissioner Ward has made, given the objection from a resident in this particular development, given the proximity of the panels to the street, which is quite close, and the comments that have been made by Commissioner Brost relative to the viability or actually lack thereof of a landscape plan that might allow us to move forward with it, my motion would be to deny the request for the panels.
Commissioner Helfrey?
I second that.
All right, so there's a motion on the table and a second to deny the department's recommendation. Any further discussion?
If we deny it now, just to be clear, that means it's done. Can they come back?
Mr. Vunich, I believe their only further option would be the Board of Adjustment, but you can correct me on that.
Well, Mr. Chair, first, tonight's vote is on the information report. This is the department's recommendation to the commission. So at the July meeting, the letter of recommendation, which will be your final action, will be back for a vote. Then that final action is forwarded to City Council for receipt and filing in August. Can they come back? Certainly. There is no prohibition relative to CUPs for refiling, but we would hope that they would not refile unless there is a major change or alteration.
And then the commissioner, the chair, Joe, also raised the question, I'm sorry, point of information. Chair Beatty also raised a question about Board of Adjustment and its role in this, if any.
I would interpret that as a use variance. I would defer to the city attorney. I think it would be beyond the purview of the board.
Well, so there's two options here. Because this is a conditional use permit, there's an appeal process that can be made to the city council, first off. Second is, would a variance, could it be requested? Yes. Is it a use variance? I think I agree with that, with Mr. Vunich on that point. It is an incredibly high standard, and 99% of those are bound to be denied based on the inability to comply with that legal standard.
All right, any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Brock,
Can I get a clarification? So this is the motion to deny, so a yes denies it, a no does not. I'm just
Correct.
making sure we're all clear.
Mhm.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes to deny.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
No.
Councilmember Brost,
Yeah, I'm gonna go yes, because I did confirm there is an opposition.
Mayor Bolin.
Yes.
Motion passes to deny the variance or the CUP, my bad. Next on the agenda, PZ 39-94. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to a request regarding St. Louis County PC 39-94, the Grover Company amended C8 Planned Commercial District, Workplace District of the Town Center Regulating Plan, north side of Manchester Road, west of Taylor Road, street address 16917 Manchester Road, locator number 24B540163, which seeks a modification to the site-specific governing ordinance to allow for the use of a portion of the subject site for an outdoor area for open play by pets of patrons visiting the business, i.e. pet runs. This additional requested use would be in conjunction with the current store for retail purposes, pet supplies, and planned future coffee shop or cafe, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with its recommendation regarding the request just read into tonight's record. The department is not supporting the requested change to the existing C8 Planned Commercial District Ordinance. In its report, it notes that there are several reasons for this non-support of the requested change. First and foremost, the department does not believe that this can be considered an accessory type activity. And in fact, if you review the zoning ordinance relative to this type of activity, dog runs or pet play areas, they are generally found in the NU non-urban resident district on 5 acres or greater size sites and governed by a conditional use permit. Additionally, the department would note that the site characteristics, the lot itself being long and narrow, and the type of development associated with it would be difficult to overcome potential problems relating to dogs being off leash in a confined area. And finally, as witnessed by the comments received by the Planning and Zoning Commission from surrounding property owners and others, the impact of the dogs and potential for them barking at any time would be a negative impact on surrounding residential areas, but also commercial areas where businesses do exist and have an anticipation of a certain level of noise or lack of noise relative to the locations. So acknowledging all of these factors, the department is not supportive of this particular request, and its information report reflects such. After a motion to deny, approve with conditions, or approve, the department will be available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Is there any questions or discussion? Or can I get a motion?
I have a question. So currently the restaurant is animal friendly? Is that pretty accurate? That you can have animals there, correct?
The future cafe is to be animal friendly.
Okay.
Again,
But
the
what we're
cafe,
looking at is the dog run.
yes, the cafe is intended to be inside the building, not outside. The dog
Right.
runs are clearly outside the building.
Outside. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, just thinking, I know you're recommending no, which, okay. But even with the restaurant, or if it became a yes, we're members of a dog park at Eureka because it's right next to us. And there has to be vaccinations for the animals, on and on and on. So for the restaurant, if they're going to allow animals, is there a requirement for vaccinations, et cetera, for any dogs? I mean, I don't know that. And then if this got changed, if someone went against the recommendation, then I would think there would need to be some sort of requirements for animals anyway. But I'm currently supporting the Joe's recommendation for the record.
Well, Mr. Jackson, the city has a dog park as well, and we do require a long list of vaccinations and current records before we issue an allowance and give the code for the locking system. In terms of the cafe, which would be pet friendly, certainly that is up to the owners in terms of how they treat it, but I'm assuming that within the confines of the building, most of the pets will be on leash, not off leash, and under the control of the owner or owners. Again, in the dog run area, they're off leash, the owners are present, but certainly there can always be issues that arise. And what we found in even our dog park, despite the best behaved and the rules we have, certain times dogs just bark, and they bark at each other, passerbys, et cetera. So we're just concerned that the impact on the area will outweigh the benefit to the business.
And we have not had any complaints concerning the cafe.
The cafe is not in
dog-friendly.
operation.
Okay,
The cafe has yet to open, at least I've not been told that it has opened. Right now, it's just the retail component on a limited day of the week basis. I believe they've been open generally from Friday, Saturday, and Sundays.
and going along with Mr. Jackson's comment, does the city of Wildwood have requirements in terms of dog safety type things?
In its dog park, we certainly do, but this is a private business and certainly we leave it up to the ownership of the business to make sure that it's a safe environment or it will not be successful, I assume.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Broyles?
I've given this a lot of thought because I know this has been in the works for quite a while. I would tend personally to connect with the owners of other businesses along that corridor and the homes that are directly or not close enough, but directly behind that building. And so I would certainly vote no to allow that to happen.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey?
Is there a motion yet?
There is not a motion on the table.
I make a motion to accept the department's recommendation to deny the dog run.
All right, motion by Commissioner Helfrey to deny, a second by Commissioner Jackson. I saw his hand first. Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Accept.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have, let's see here, PZ 4-22, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 4-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning and Parks, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for a change in zoning of a 26.75 acre parcel of ground generally located on the west side of Hankin Road, south of its intersection with State Route 100. Street address 4064 Hankin Road, locator number 26Y 340014, from the NU non-urban residence district to the PS Park and Scenic District. The subject property was donated to the city by its previous owner and currently has several existing structures and buildings on the property, inclusive of a single-family dwelling and a number of accessory sheds. The deed restrictions established by the donor set out the conditions associated with future uses of the property, which include such being free of charge, it being maintained as an undeveloped wildlife refuge and preserved for the purposes of picnicking, bird watching, hiking, and fishing, hunting and shooting or killing not being permitted, the property remaining in its natural state, and such being named Portner Park. The property is located in Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has provided for your consideration the information report that is before you tonight with recommendation regarding the requested rezoning. As is noted in the information report, the city took ownership of this particular 27-acre tract of land in September of 2021. The property was bequeathed by its previous owner to the city of Wildwood, and there are a certain number of deed restrictions which were identified in the advertisement that was read into the record. As with all park properties owned by the city of Wildwood, the first step typically is to change the zoning, if not already Park and Scenic District. In this case, the zoning is not Park and Scenic District, but rather NU non-urban resident district. The change in the zoning provides protections both to the surrounding community as well as the city, because the zoning district designation fits the future use of the property. In the information report, there are a number of rationales for the support of the department of this change in zoning. The department is recommending the change, and tonight it is seeking the commission's support of that recommendation. After a motion is made, the department will be available to answer any questions the commission members may have in this regard. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any, Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, this is the one that has the house on it that you were going to use for storage, right?
It does have a recent construction on it, Mr. Jackson. The house was built around 2002, so not that old. There is a bit of a mold problem inside that we're going to address. And for the most part, we'll use it for the benefit of the community. I'm not sure what that is. There's a long planning process ahead for the property, I believe, from my perspective, and we'll be engaging the community as a whole, and particularly those property owners around it.
Yeah, and isn't there an opening for a Parks and Recreation person for the city?
Yes, our superintendent of Parks and Recreation retired in March of this year, and we're in the process of trying to engage a new person for that position.
So this is a city council thing. Again, I think it'd be a great perk for offering you can do whatever you want with the house to use it in the future, but for consideration, just a suggestion to mayor and city council that's also commissioners. This would be a great perk to hire a great Parks and Recreation if they had a place to stay as well. So that's up to you guys. I'm not advocating for it, but making a suggestion that might be an option to help recruit an exceptional park person. Outside that, I support it. So thanks.
Thank you.
I would
Any-
like to make a recommendation to accept, to make a motion to accept the recommendation of,
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Gross. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
yes,
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes,
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Next on the agenda, Mr. Newberry, an update on PZ 3-21.
Yes, sir. An update by the Department of Planning on PZ 3-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a comprehensive review of, then consider potential changes to Chapter 420 Subdivision and Development Regulations of the City of Wildwood's Code of Ordinances, inclusive of Section 420.010 through Section 420.410, as well as all attachments thereto, for the purposes of ensuring such are germane, consistent with current practices, and applicable with current law. All wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, this particular item on tonight's agenda is just an update. The department is seeking no action on the part of the commission. As is referenced in the memorandum, this particular item was at public hearing in spring of 2021. Since that time, the department has been conducting research, slow research, but conducting research on those items that were identified as for potential consideration of change. That research is coming to a conclusion, and the department hopes to have information to the Planning and Zoning Commission this summer on potential changes to our subdivision and development regulations. If there are any questions regarding any of the information provided to the commission tonight, the department will be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any questions for the department?
Thank you again, all.
Thank you. All right, that looks like the end of the agenda. So can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Ward. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Wow, it's still daylight out here. I can go back to work.
Little daylight.
Good night, everyone.
All right, have a good night.
aye.